Welcome to the DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today, we're fortunate enough to be joined by Kavita Nadan. She is the co-founder of Locumate, doing some seriously interesting things in the pharmacy sector. Kavita is a pharmacist by background and really bringing some interesting technology to the pharmacy sector, which needs a bit of a shake-up. Kavita, or Kavi as people might know you by, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Anthony. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's always a pleasure to catch up. In terms of let's dig in a little bit, your background, obviously a pharmacist, but I'd love to hear about your story and how you sort of get involved in pharmacy to begin with.
Sure. So pharmacy is pretty much, I think I've been in pharmacy longer than I've been around. Like it's just 15, first job. It was really interesting. My first job was I grew up in Maui, which is in Gippsland, a bit further out. Quite regional. Yeah. And my dad used to be a patient at one of the local pharmacies, and so he got to know the pharmacist there really well. So when we moved up closer to Berwick, which is a bit more, well, definitely a lot further in than Maui is, he wrote on a piece of paper, just a handwritten note to give to the pharmacy that was local to Berwick, and just said, "Can you give these two girls a job?" Because their dad comes to my pharmacy. And so my sister, who was very much into, I wanted a job straight away, and she was younger than me, she went out and got that job. And so when I was ready at the age of about 16, 17, she's like, "Come, because we've got that note." So I was like, all right, let's go.
So you got a note, so let's get a job.
Yeah.
Get the golden ticket.
The golden ticket. So, yeah, that's where it all started. I mean, I was obviously a pharmacy assistant back then. When it came to actually getting into a course at university after VCE, I actually didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew it was something in health sciences, but there was so many opportunities, and it came down to the fact that I knew pharmacy, like it felt familiar, and I'm like, why not? I mean, I know pharmacy in the retail sense, but I didn't know pharmacy in the pharmacist sense and what happens in the dispensary. And, you know, being in pharmacy, you think you know, but that is a whole different world in there once you step into the dispensary. I mean, it's a small part of your pharmacy, but it does a lot of work for what's involved and what you see from an outsider as well. So that started my journey into pharmacy. And, you know, as being in community, I always wanted to work in community. It's just, I loved that aspect of being able to work with people. That's one of my biggest...
that is one fortunate thing of being in community. You get connections with different people.
You do, and I did do placements at hospitals, and I found it to be quite disconnected in the level of connection that you make with your patients, right? Here, you can follow a patient's journey all the way throughout, and it's sad in some cases where you lose patients, but it's also gives you a sense of like... reward and fulfillment to be able to help that person. I always knew I wanted to be in community pharmacy. I just didn't know where I wanted to go with it. So, you know, I managed a locum for a bit once I registered. So I did work at a few regional areas, went to Metro. I went and worked in Bairnsdale for about 6 months. That was a great experience. Joined the Rotary there, got up at 5 a.m. Right. What else do you do in Bairnsdale, right? And managed in Churchill, which is also down in Gippsland. And then I was like, you know, I'm at a point where I don't know, do I want to go into the path of like an MBA and go into industry and I was very fortunate to be part of a group that really allowed me to to progress and gave me opportunities. And they're like, look, we've got an opportunity in Endeavour Hills. Do you want to pursue partnership? And I was like, why not? If there's anything I do, it's just jump into things, probably sometimes without thinking, which is completely opposite to Serge, my co-founder. But I think that's why it works so well. So, you know, I jumped in and that was ownership, and that's now 10 years ago. But I'm always of the sense that if anything's not working, or if I want to change something, I always just go, how can we do it better? And so
it's a good question, isn't it?
It's always a question, and it's something that I think pharmacies should consistently be asking, whether it be just a process in their pharmacy or something even bigger, right? I know during the pandemic, so when hand sanitizers was like, you could not get it nowhere. It was just out of stock, along with everything else.
Everyone knows. Yeah. It's chaos to get hand sanitizer.
The first few months was terrible.
Oh, horrible.
I remember that website that popped up.
Yes.
Findarat.com.au.
That's
and
right.
I actually had a look at it and there was no rats anywhere.
No.
That's pointless.
So we decided, hey, why don't we make it? I mean, we can actually make hand sanitizer. So we worked it out, bottled it up, and people were coming from like the western suburbs just to come and grab stuff. It's
brilliant.
about thinking outside the box, right? And I guess, so that's my pharmacy journey in terms of where I've been, what I've been doing. But, right now it's just I've got a manager in place so that I can go out and pursue other things.
Yeah, I love the story and how it sort of was familiar as a kid, getting to know pharmacy and being around it, and then all of a sudden you start as a pharmacy assistant or even a retail assistant, and then all of a sudden you move into being a pharmacist.
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes what we know and what we're used to. It makes it an easy transition. So, but the community part of it is really where the value's added. I find it fascinating that you were in hospital and you didn't really enjoy that, because it's more net one person after the other, so probably a bit more transactional. So there's still people clearly, but you're not following a journey. It's just reactionary,
single serving, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I know you use a lot of your clinical knowledge in hospital, and that's fantastic. And there's room for progression, but I think it's different personalities, obviously, in pharmacy and what you want to do. So it's just like at that time, especially, there was just two career pathways that we really knew as students, right? You knew community or you knew hospital. And when you get embedded in community, it's like you just don't want to leave once you're in there.
No, brilliant. It seems like I can see the passion about pharmacy and being involved in it. I know we've spoken a bit off camera, but you're really passionate about the careers and the upskilling of people that are coming along the journey. And tell us a bit about that in terms of where you sort of stem from careers, helping some younger people get into pharmacy and think about it as a career.
Yeah. So something I've always been passionate about is just helping the students. And, I've had a lot of interns over the years and a lot of students who've done placement. And one thing is that you ask them, hey, so what made you get into pharmacy? And a lot of times they don't really have an answer. And I that's fine, because that was me when I was a student, right? But it's like, well, then what do you want to do? And there's that lack of, drive and thought and what is out there. And I'm like, this is not fair for them, that they don't really know, besides this community or hospital pathway, what else there is out there. And so, when we went on started the whole Locumate journey as well, and I was like, for me, and I said this to Serge from the start, I really do want to invest in the students because they are our future. So whether it's locuming in itself is a career to pursue, right? But if they don't have the tools available to be able to make a decision, then they're going to be stuck and they're going to feel like there is just no room for growth and there's no opportunities, when actually pharmacy, that degree, can actually take you so many places, whether it be working in a GP clinic, whether it be now aged care, embedded in aged care facilities, researching. I mean, we've got, I know one of my students recently went out and spoke to a tech company, and there's a pharmacist in there who, because she's got the knowledge and background there in the pharmacy space, she's like, this is fantastic. Like, I work for a tech company. I'm like, how cool is that? You would never think of that.
You wouldn't put those two together.
Never, because we still use a fax, right? So,
All do.
So for me, I think if we don't start at that student level and get them passionate about the opportunities, they're not going to be passionate about it down the track. And it all then links back to retention and the big dropout of students from our profession. We need to get them excited and know that they're making such an impact, which then down the future, they will be able to go, yep, I'm so glad I invested in my career and invested in this profession.
No, that's brilliant. Locumate. Obviously, Locumate was probably one of those things. How can we make this better?
Yeah.
Fascinating. We've been around the pharmacy industry for about 10 years now, and when I saw this idea, I go, geez, that's brilliant.
It's
simple.
One of those ones you're like, why wasn't it there already?
Wow. Yeah, why wasn't there already? Yeah. Exactly. Anytime you tell anyone about it or anyone sees it, that's the reaction. where did it sort of stem from? Obviously, there's a problem, right? Finding locums, and if anyone doesn't know what a locum is, effectively they're temporary staff that float around, which are pharmacists. So if someone goes on holiday, they may need someone to replace because they need a pharmacist in a pharmacy. You can't just go without one. It doesn't work that way. So they would come in, spend a day in a pharmacy or a week. They may go regional for a week or two. There's different options for a locum, and it's a career, right? And it gives people a bit more flexibility rather than being bedded down in one place. They can spend a bit more time traveling Australia, visiting different pharmacies and communities, and I think it's an interesting career pathway. But the locum pool, from what I understand, has really been that sort of HR process where you're part of some sort of HR organisation, and then you sign up to them, sort of like a temp staffing group. If anyone's worked for one of those, where you sign up and then they find placements for you, and then the pharmacist might pick up a phone, call and say, we need someone tomorrow, or we need someone next week, or over Christmas, or whatever it might be, and they will go on the hunt to find someone that can fill that actual placement. At what point were you frustrated in the process where the question came out, how can we make this better, and started the sort of journey to what Locumate is?
What was that painful day?
Yeah.
It's clear as daylight in my mind.
Yeah.
I love telling this story because I always get so passionate about it. So she'll be like, calm down.
No, passion's good.
Passion is so good, right. So, pandemic was every pharmacist in this country and probably around the globe knows when the pandemic hit, because there was a pandemic in our pharmacies as well, a pandemic of toilet paper, of everything else under the sun that you could get. So during that time when you had to go and self-isolate for a test, it didn't take like 2 days. It took close to 7 to 10 days to get your results back, right? And because we didn't know what COVID was, it was such an unknown, I was like, nah. So 2 of my main pharmacists were out for a good 10 days because they were isolating. I went through a lot of locums during that time. But for me, it was just keeping the pharmacy open, getting through the day, pumping out the scripts, serving our customers. So when I had a moment to reflect and I got that invoice in the mail, and I was like, oh my gosh, I paid this much for locums. And at the same time, when my doors would open, I wouldn't know who was coming in. I had no opportunity to interact with them, communicate. And so this all came to a boiling point, and I came home one day, and Serge he was working from home at that point. And so he had all the time in the world when previously he didn't, right? To be able to listen to my ranting and whinging and, coming home at like 9 or 10 p.m. at night. All I wanted to do was just literally talk to someone about what had happened during the day. It was like my debrief session as well. Yep. And he was sitting across the table, and he's like, no, so come on, there must be a piece of software that we could just get and be able to automate this. I'm like, yeah, if you can find something for me, I will use it. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't want to be using emails. I don't even want to be calling people. I don't want to be having to not know who's coming and then the rates that they are, and then paying like almost double that a month later. So he's like, there's actually nothing available in Australia. I'm like, that's weird. So then we looked overseas. Yes, there was solutions that were probably about 70% done, 60, 70, but not exactly to what I wanted. I'm like, Serge, this is what I need. And literally that night, we stayed up till probably midnight or 1 a.m., sat down, and he got into, solution architect mode. Yep. And he mapped it all out for me. And I would love to go back. I hope he took a screenshot of literally the first basic step-to-step that we designed. And I was like, yep, this is what I need. And so we went, that's how the journey started. That was
it's a
me
great story.
Him with a problem and him going, you know what, I'm going in solution mode and this is what you need. So, yes, it is the perfect marriage of pharmacy and tech in this situation. And, from that was our solution. That was the product. But when we went down that journey, we realized, and you talk about locuming being a career, you talk about, having, especially like in hospital, having those transactional interactions with people, we realized that this was what was happening with a lot of locums as well. And that's also when we decided this is bigger than just an app. This is actually changing the mindset of the industry. This is building a community for our pharmacists and our locums, and this is really highlighting the work and the transparency around what this work involves. So, yeah, and that's where our vision came from.
Yeah, that's a great story. Yeah, coming home in frustration. And if anyone's listening out there that's a non-tech, just marry a somewhat technical partner and you'll be fine.
Even just to come up with the idea. It's always in that frustration moment. I don't have any ideas I've had waiting in line.
There's a place of frustration. How do I solve this? How do we make this better? And I think it's a classic story, and I think some of the best ideas come from real adversity. We find that some of the biggest companies are made in times of recession, and COVID was a time of uncertainty and massive uncertainty, especially in the sector you were in. And from a global perspective, you were probably one of the only retail outlets other than supermarkets that were open with some retail sitting, and everyone was coming thinking, probably knocking on your door asking what's going on as it moved into vaccinations and all these sort of things. It's been so long, and you see the industry's pretty tired. You can tell that pharmacists have come to a bit of their wits' end, and I think the whole healthcare profession is probably at that point, understaffed. It's going through a bit of pain right now. So I think, to come up with that concept in this market, brilliant. Then it's about the execution, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's that process been like? Because clearly there's an idea, and obviously Serge and yourself coming together, you got a bit of tech component and background married with the complete domain knowledge. What did the execution look like? How did it start? What was the next steps after penciling down, I've got a bit of an idea how we bring this together?
Yeah.
Now what?
Well, look, I mean, it has been, so when you just like a baby and you learn to walk, you learn to ride and talk. That was us. Like, even though Serge has that technical background, which really helped, because I think if we were both non-technical, this would have been such a harder process. But I have loved learning. So, going through that design phase, then going to the realization, hey, this is actually possible. Like, are we going to do this? And then seeing it come to life and going to APP with literally 4, screens just to show this is the product, and people getting their buy-in and going through that process of getting everyone excited about it. Like, I've loved that journey. I mean, I personally don't deal with the developers as much, but I'm the person who's like, I think we should do this. And they're sort of like, yeah, all right, we can do it, or we'll park it for later, right? Because for me, I'm like, just do it.
Controls the roadmap.
Whatever code in, and we'll just do it and, get it out there. And he's like, no, Kavi, like, that's not how it works. So I think between us, like, that's the good grounding that we've had, that, we can bounce off ideas of each other, and he will tell me what's possible and what's not. But also for him, he needs to know what's happening in the industry as well, and what are our pain points currently, which has helped to develop a lot of those features. What's next? What's the most important? When we did the launch in Victoria in January, we did it with a small group of pharmacies, and the most critical thing with that was getting the feedback, because what it allowed us to do is really go, this feature, as much as we thought that was very important right now, it's actually not. What's important is, invoicing, or it might just be the feedback feature. But these are the things which has allowed us to really go, okay, we need to think about this realistically, because you can get so excited and caught up, and the flashing lights, and that's where I want to be right now. But and that's something that I've had to put a lot of brakes on, because I'm the type who's like, if I want something, I want it now. And Serge has been quite practical about that. So, but overall, like, the whole startup journey is so exciting. And if anyone ever actually wants to do it, like, I would highly recommend it. Just have a really good support network. And really, my biggest advice is the experts, they're the experts for a reason. Like, honestly, invest your money and your time in them, because you will save yourself so much pain down the track if things are to go, out of whack.
I was saying that to Andrew this morning over a conversation we're having in another project.
Yeah.
Like, people have come to us for assistance and then just ignoring everything we're saying and doing it their way.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. What's the point?
Correct. Yeah. Exactly.
And you can sort of, as technical, you can see the problems they're creating for themselves in the future, and they don't get it. And it's, I think having that technical founder or someone that's got technical nous is it's value add. So in terms of that end, because we're talking predominantly to non-techs that have domain knowledge, domain expertise, what's some of the qualities in, I know it's your husband, but Serge, that you see that you've needed to support the journey of building the product? Just take your hat off of husband, wife, co-founders and how you connected. But what's some of the qualities that he's brought to the table that you really needed to get you to this point?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the main things is attention to detail. I struggle with that. I'm very much like, yep, I'm that person who's like, yeah, this looks amazing. Like, let's do it. He is very precise and will go through things very thoroughly. You need that. You need that person who will, go through with a fine tooth comb and look at everything. Also needs somebody who is going to think about how everything will fit in with each other. I think that's so important to be able to then set yourself up for the future. And one thing he did really well is making sure that this product could be changed, manipulated down the track if we ever wanted to go into other industries, other, pathways. And so again, always future thinking as well, but then being realistic about what you need right now. So that was very important for us. And the other thing that was very important is just having that relationship to be able to know what the technical people are talking about, right? So I mean, he himself, he's like, I've been out of that technical stuff for a long time, but he still knew and he could still converse and know exactly what information to ask when it was required. So those things were just vital for making sure that this project got to where it is today.
Yeah, you don't need to know how to code. You need to know how to understand and communicate what you're actually after, so then the people who can code can follow along the right instructions and not assume things.
Yeah, that's it.
No, they're really good points, and I think detail's very important, because what we find is a lot of the co-founders or founders of businesses that generally have the idea may not be the detail people, and that can sort of hold them up to execution, because tech, if nobody knows, we have to think about every single possible scenario within the confines of a feature. What could go wrong, might go wrong, and then you bring in the future sort of grade to what you're sort of doing. So future thinking is paramount, but we're not building the future, but we're putting some roadblocks in to make sure we can actually stay on the same path towards the future. So I think some really good points there, and that jigsaw puzzle. I'll leave that one to Anthony to bring that together.
I think when we met Serge last, he said people say he's a geek, and then he was like, "You're the real one." Being able to put that together and understand at that low level, I take it as one.
It's a compliment. Yeah,
I'm not going to go on Beauty and the Geek. I'm not that kind, but.
A bit more personality than that, but
right.
But it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's just trying to join the dots. Because there's so many ways you can sort of skin a cat when designing tech, and it's what approach you might bring together, how you might sort of juggle it. And I find it fascinating, the approach that you've taken to build your application. So I was talking to Serge off camera, obviously. You've built a web app and put it in a downloadable app. So you've wrapped it in an app, in an actual app, deployed it on the App Store. Some people come to us and they want everything done all at once. And I think it's really smart to do that, because you're saving money. And then the biggest learning I've got from you is you've actually learned from your customers and are building tech for customers now. Not just your idea, because your idea starts and stems, but your customers will help you evolve it to a point, because in the end, it's all about helping customers develop value, or helping people on the platform, not just getting your idea into an app. So there's a lot in that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's always been our driver, right? The problem came first in the solution. So if we don't listen to our customers, what's the point? We're just spitting out stuff which nobody really wants, and it's just the time and money better spent. So we have to be very mindful of that.
what's the plan? So how is the project going in the pharmacy sector? Because I've seen it bubbling around. So what's the feeling? What's the sense in the market? How's it? So it's been, 7, 8 months, 9 months since it launched.
Yep.
How's it tracking?
It's tracking really well. I think, obviously launching in Victoria was great because we're based in Victoria, and now we've got like a 90% plus fill rate in Victoria. So what we're trying to do is then replicate this in other states that we launch. Queensland was our next project, and that's starting to build up a lot of traction, and then heading into New South Wales. And having that phased approach has been so important to really spending the time and effort and getting making sure that we have the support available for our pharmacies and also our locums as well. So as we've built up our team as well. And, so now that whole customer service and support side of it is ticking along really well, and people are knowing the team behind it. So in terms of where Locumate and what we want to do with it, ultimately, locuming, we really want to highlight the benefits of locums, especially in this market right now where we are struggling with staff. We are struggling to get people, whether it's pharmacy assistants, but even pharmacists, and especially to rural regional areas where these pharmacies need a break. Like, it's not like Metro where you can get a locum in, for...
It's a lot easier, isn't it? There's a lot more locums in a pool of Melbourne.
Correct.
Rather than
That's
a
right.
regional centre.
So we're trying to be more proactive with that and trying to see, reach out to locums who can go out and do a stint maybe for 4 to 6 weeks and service some of the pharmacies around that space, and say to these owners and managers, have your time off. Like, you need a break, get recharged, even if it is just 3-4 days, it doesn't matter. And making these locums accessible, but then enhancing that experience for them as well. Hey, make it a trip and a holiday out of it. Go somewhere you haven't been before, get a new experience, see the countryside, like whatever it might be. So we really want to now start really setting up that whole locum experience side of things as well. We want to start doing a lot more about them blogging their journey and how fulfilling it is to be a locum. And from that, we want to stem into, the opportunities for students as well. We have a dedicated student team at Locumate, and they're doing some fantastic projects. They're really highly motivated, passionate individuals, and giving them the opportunity to have the podcast, the Q&As, meet people that they would never have thought to meet in university, and giving them opportunities to then be able to utilize that moving forward in their career. So there's a lot of aspects in how we want to, ultimately we want to bring
it all together.
Yeah. Our aim is to create better pharmacists, and that's what we're always going to provide, whether it be through the student, it's going to be through the training and development of our early career pharmacists, and even the pharmacists who are probably nearing the end of their career. It doesn't matter, but there will be something available for you to be able to stay in this profession. And, we are excited about where this can take us in terms of in Australia. But, if this is a project that we want to take globally, then we will take it globally, because pharmacist shortage, you look in the US, they're going through the same exact thing right now, crying out for a talent. And if Locumate can be an answer for that, then, hey, so be it.
That's exciting.
It is exciting.
I think you mentioned at the start, it's more than an app. Clearly, it's all about the people, the locums, the training, the upskilling, the creating a profession out of it, and talking about the value you can add to communities. I think, it's a really good initiative that you're driving here.
It's a platform, not just an app to serve the single serving. It's an ecosystem. Yeah, it's not just serving the substitute locum problem.
Yeah, that's it. That's
as I like to call them.
Well, it started there, right?
Yeah.
So, but then it evolves, and I think you're passionate around people support career. Is really starting to stem through it. And the jobs in pharmacy piece is also something that you're sort of exploring.
Absolutely,
I know that. Yeah. So in terms of how you might expand the network for not just locuming to a job career path in pharmacy too. Yeah. So there's a lot bubbling along, and it's moving at rapid rates. So it's pretty exciting to be at the world of Locumate, I'd imagine at the moment. Yes. What if you were to reflect? What's some things you learnt through this journey that you could share with some of the audience about that being I would classify you as a fast-moving startup in terms of the way you've onboarded. For anyone listening, you've gone from 0 to 400 or so shifts going through
that
the
first
platform.
month in January when we got our bill of just one shift, we were just so excited.
Excited
for the future.
It starts with one.
It starts somewhere, right? We're like, we're transacting. Oh my gosh. It's so exciting. But
Yeah.
Learnings, so many, Andrew. I think one of the biggest is, I've always been a female in a very male-dominated space, but
industry.
It has been even more heightened, especially in the tech space. And, that's because probably women just don't realize that there is so many opportunities for them. But having to be in that space and to find my voice and to be able to, impart my ideas and realize that, hey, people are, I have the domain expertise. So people are looking to me for that advice and to be able to guide them along, especially some of the devs that'll be like, so Kavi, what do you reckon we need? And I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we need. And I'm like, do they actually want that from me? But you have to realize that it is really important to voice your opinion and to make sure that you have a massive input in what goes on. The other thing, when we were literally talking about this probably half an hour before this podcast, Serge and I were just like, oh my goodness, things are happening so quickly. But the main thing is that you need to connect with your founder, co-founder, constantly. And it doesn't have to be a sit-down session, but even if it's just 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever, but you need to be on the same page. And we found that to be a big learning curve for us, especially, we've got so many other things going on. I've got my pharmacy business. We've got kids, and finding that time and space to get into creative mode and to get into, just getting up to date.
Mode, right?
Yeah. It's on the fly a lot of the times, but it's great because it constantly keeps you thinking as well. And also just for me personally, I've loved having to go from doing my first podcast ever, which was with Scott, to now being so comfortable. And you don't understand, my first podcast, I did hours of prep for it. I just
Did you? I didn't prep for this.
I had no idea what to expect, but to now being to the point where I've that's so much growth, to know what to expect and be so comfortable in this environment, it's really rewarding. And so people don't understand that there is so much you have to learn from it, but it's really exciting because it's completely different from my pharmacy space, and I love it. I love that it's a whole new learning curve for me.
It's using different skills. It's a very different journey.
Yeah, definitely.
We used to prep a lot in the first few episodes. I don't even check who the guest is when we talk to them anymore.
That's the exciting thing because you're like, this is actually a proper natural conversation, right? It's
that's
just
what we're looking for.
It works the best.
So much easier. Yeah.
I was going to say something. I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
Sorry, you didn't prep. That's why.
That's all right. I was going to say something. Oh, that's what it is. Learning. I think in a fast-paced, moving business, you're sort of always on the edge of learning and pushing you and evolving you. And I think it's probably one of the most fascinating things I find about being in business and around business, especially fast-moving things. You're always pushing the boundary of what you think you're capable of. It opens up your mind once you break through. So uncomfortable in a podcast, comfortable in a podcast.
That's it.
And it doesn't take long when you throw yourself in those deep ends a little bit. It's just... The old saying goes, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
But from a business perspective and being in this world, it's fast moving growth, and it's a lot of personal development happens through the journey of business. And the journey you're on is just moving pretty quickly.
It is moving very quickly. And I think it's important also, if to be able to because you will have 50 million things going on at once, but you need to just be able to find your own way to sort that out and set your own agenda, and how you manage that as well is so important because that will not stop. So you need to be able to change and mold yourself to be able to change to your environment.
Brilliant, Kavi. Thank you for coming on, sharing your journey to date with Locumate. We wish you all the best in the years to come, in terms of where it might end up and potentially going international. I think there's some exciting things ahead. If anyone wants to find out about Locumate, locumate.com.au, check them out. They're doing some great things in the pharmacy sector. And Kavi, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the DevReady Podcast, sharing your journey. We'll check in probably in the next 6 to 12 months. I'd love to see how it goes from here.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been brilliant. And yes, I talk a lot, but it's been good.
That's good. Great episode. Thank you.
We want to hear from you. That's why you're on the podcast.
True. That's right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Kavi.
Bye.